FY26, absolutely in 27. So just want to plant that context. Commissioner?
Well, does that also, is Archer completely out?
No, Archer in the wastewater.
Yeah.
Archer is still completely in. Archer got 100% funded. Archer has some things that they need to do on their end. Archer has to construct a collection facility in Archer, and Archer, by our contract that they have signed and voted on unanimously, and we have signed and voted on unanimously, they have to run the line from Archer to Champions Park where they'll hook into us. So they do those things, and then we will be able to pump, they'll be able to pump their sewage to us. But Archer is still absolutely in. The contract is signed, and again, they are fully funded. They got 13 million roughly and 1.5 for the collection center or the line collection center. So Archer did very well in this year's legislative appropriations, right? So and that's good news for us because our budget depends on them paying their 14.5, 14.6%, right? So we are still holding hands and we are all loving partners. All right, Dallas, take it away.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and Commissioners. You should have two documents in front of you. The first is a projects and funding sources. This is our CIP for the next 5 years for your electric, water, and wastewater systems, as well as showing where the funding is going to come for each of those areas. Won't spend a lot of time going into this document, but I wanted you to have it so you could see the upcoming projects. We'll talk about some of the more larger projects in the PowerPoint. But to the manager's point, if you look on page 3, caveat, a lot of this is the wastewater plant, but next year's capital outlay in the utility system alone is nearly $72 million. So to the manager's point, there will be a lot of activity going on starting next year and moving into the future. So with that, I'll move into the PowerPoint.
Do we have sound, Mr.
Got about 2 minutes into.
As a refresher for the commission, in governmental accounting, we break everything up into funds so that the commission and public can easily track where the money's coming from, where it's going, how much is left in each bucket of money, if you will. So our large differentiations are the governmental side, which generally your general fund, some of those funds, and then your proprietary side, which are your utilities. So tonight we're focusing only on your proprietary, specifically on your enterprise funds, which are your utilities, your electric, water, and wastewater systems. Our budgeting assumptions and important factors that have affected the budget this year. As always, the Commission's policy is that your utility rates generate revenues that meet your operating expenses while continuing to offer the lowest, most competitive rates possible. But the city government, city tax dollars don't subsidize your utilities. Your utilities stand on their own. They charge fees that are sufficient to pay for their expenses. One thing that we are facing, as well as everybody else, is tariffs, whether or not they're in effect or not in effect day by day. Some days we're getting billed for them 10, 15%. Some days we're not, but we have had to include tariff costs into the operations costs in these budgets that are before you. We have planned electric system rate increases. That is to prepare the system for future capital and debt capacity and ratings, particularly the second feed. The city's going to need to issue debt for that second feed, so we're making sure we position the utility fund in a position where it can get a favorable credit rating by showing that it is a profitable utility. One thing we discussed last year, and we'll discuss a little bit deeper this year, is depreciation expenses, primarily driven by development contributions to the city. But the City Commission's current policy is that we fund our depreciation expense 100%. That depreciation expense is greatly outpacing what we can absorb in our annual rates and what we're seeing in the cost of living increases. So we'd like to have a conversation or get some direction from the Commission for staff to bring back some options on future plans for depreciation funding. And then last but not least, of course, everything costs more this year, like every other year. But, property and liability insurance increases. We have higher utility rate increases. Audit costs are increasing. Pension costs are increasing. Staffing costs are increasing. Staffing requirements are increasing. Basically, list anything we do and the cost is going up. So as a high-level overview of what staff is proposing for the commission's consideration is a 4.5% increase in electric. We also project that the power cost adjustment will be slightly increased next year based on the projections from Florida Municipal Power Agency, where wholesale power costs are increasing due to increases in natural gas pricing. We have a water rate increase of 7.5%, as well as a tier adjustment, a wastewater rate increase of 8.5%, no change proposed in mosquito control. Again, we'll talk about depreciation and we'll talk about our capital improvement program. So moving into some of the large projects that we are working on and that are funded in your budget next year. FDOT Twin Pair rework. As the commission's aware, there's a lot of utility relocations and upgrades that need to be done for the Twin Pairs. A large portion of that is being funded by the DOT, but those dollars do funnel through the city, so we have to capture them in our budget. And then there is a fairly large capital outlay expense to the city itself. We have the elevated storage tank on State Road 26. We have a lift station relocation, which is part of that Twin Pairs project. Obviously, the wastewater treatment plant will be coming online, or starting construction. We have a staffing plan. One of the requirements of the wastewater treatment plant, now that we're going to an advanced treatment, is we're going to have to increase the staffing at that plant and increase the hours that that plant is staffed. So it's been the commission's direction that FedEx it has been the commission's direction previously that we should step into those staffing increases. So instead of having to hire 10 new employees all at once, we're adding one every year until we can get to that increased staffing. So you'll see in our wastewater system, we have added another staff person. Expansion, enhancement of utilities, and then the Public Works Operations Center. And then for several of these projects, the city will be needing to issue debt to fund the project. The permit for your wastewater treatment plant, and Mr. Jones or Mr. Green, jump in if I'm wrong. The permit from the DEP requires a certain level of staffing at the plant. Because we're a basic treatment now, we have one level. Once we build the new plant with a higher capacity and advanced treatment, we go to the next level. I think it's 16 hours per day, Monday through Friday, with 8 hours on the weekends or something along those lines.
This, and it's one of the reasons why we had a meeting with High Springs today. And I think that they wish they had elected to join this partnership. Operating expenses and requirements, testing that have to be done for an advanced treatment facility, truly next level. Archer will pay, they're buying it, their capacity up front.
The wholesale cost of Archer joining us will help us defray those costs across a larger customer base. So they will be absorbing a portion of that increase. Yeah, they're going to be treated. They're buying their capacity just like any of your developers pay a development fee, but then they'll get a monthly bill for their usage. It says you bought 100,000 gallons, you owe us for 100,000 gallons,
which accounts for staffing.
It will, yes. It'll help us defray those costs across.
The two main benefits of the partnership: one, regional, better for the environment, one, carbon footprint. Two, we all knew from the beginning what we were getting into. One thing for a city the size of Gainesville, if you've got 100,000 people do something like this, you're High Springs, Newberry, Archer, really hard to accomplish what we are accomplishing right now. They believe they'll be up and running about the time that the plant comes online. They have a lot of work to do. They've got to build a collection center. They've got to acquire property rights so that they can hook all of their residents up to that. There's going to be some roads that are going to have to be torn up and re-put down. So there's a lot that need that. But by our contract, again, which was unanimously voted on by both, signed by both cities, they've agreed to do their end. They're running the line from Archer to Newberry. That's on them, right? Our responsibility is to build the treatment plant and then be able and ready to accept that sewage when they can ship it.
Mr. Mayor, there is a stipulation in the agreement that they owe us a monthly fee regardless of whether or not they send us any. They have to pay that customer charge just like any of your other customers would. That will help pay for that even if they have not connected to the system. They'll have to start paying us. All right, so I feel like we've been talking about this project for ever, but the State Road Twin Pairs project is coming. So your Utilities and Public Works Department will be spending a good portion of next year and the year after relocating quite a number of your utilities out of the existing right-of-way, making some upgrades to those utilities. DOT is paying for the moving. The city has to pay for betterment. And the current estimate is about $10 million project, with Newberry having to pay about $4 million of that cost, the state reimbursing us $6 million. This is one of the projects that we are proposing for debt service, to issue debt primarily in your electric system to cover the cost of moving these utilities. The elevated storage tank out on State Road 26. This project has been planned and funded for a year or two. We were holding off on it while we were going through the SRF funding process for your wastewater plant in an attempt to make SRF look more favorable upon us. But it's a 500,000 gallon storage tank in the Tanglewood subdivision. It is fully funded. You have SRF funding in place for it whenever the city decides to start construction. We also got $1.5 million, I want to say, in grants from the state for it. And then your ARPA money will be paying for the balance. Total cost about $6.3 million. The big one is the wastewater treatment plant. As you know, we are under administrative order to construct a new wastewater plant by August of next year. We had a very productive, the city manager, Mr. Jones and I and our consulting team, a very productive meeting in Tallahassee 2 or 3 weeks ago with DEP. They gave us as much of a green light as they will give you prior to a hearing, so we're very excited that we will receive funding next Wednesday. Next Wednesday is the SRF hearing, where we will find out how much funding they are going to provide to us. Now, the majority of that is going to be loan funding, so we do have to pay it back. But at that same hearing, we'll also find out how much principal forgiveness or grant funding they may be providing to us. The current estimated cost, the Newberry portion, is 55 to 60 million. It's a moving target. We won't know for sure until the bids come in. But we have received $25 million in grants, and obviously the commission has rewritten their development agreements to require developers to prepay and lock in their development fees, which has really made the DEP happy, for lack of a better word, with our funding plan and feel like they can fund us.
I want to reiterate on that point. Our team has been successful at getting the capacity in the new plant that we need for existing residents funded through grants. What we are taking debt service on, capacity that we need for growth. So the developers are pre-purchasing that capacity. So the difference is being paid by new growth, impact fees, development, those kind of things. If you're an existing Newberry resident, we have been successful at getting that capacity of fully funded through the state. Beating that drum, growth is paying for growth more so in the city of Newberry than I believe just about in any other city.
We gotta hire somebody to get rid of. We had somebody come here.
Our new public work director, you want to take that?
Microphone.
We actually are going to be able to truck them across the site. That will be the contract. So we'll be able to haul them right over, just over the line. Roughly how much will that save?
If the public couldn't hear,
You wanna add something?
if the public couldn't hear Assistant City Manager Jones' answer, that's going to save us roughly $200,000 to $250,000.
All right, the next project is not funded in this fiscal year. There's a small portion funded to move some items, but the construction is not funded. And that's your Utilities and Public Works Operations Center. Long-term goal, the next 3 to 6 years is to move what we affectionately refer to as the yard off of Northwest First Avenue to the Environmental Park. So with that, as the commission's aware, Northwest First Avenue is going to become State Road 26. No offense to Mr. Green and Mr. Jones, but the yard is not the most attractive thing you want on your main street, so we're going to move it down to the environmental park. Sorry, I mean, it's the.
It's all right.
I mean, if the commission disagrees and thinks it's a beautiful downtown facility, we can absolutely keep it there and save $2 million. All right. And then the last one, the big one, I know this is an important project for the community, is the secondary feed, the secondary electric feed, to provide increased capacity to the system, but also increased resiliency. As we know, it only takes one car to hit a pole on our main feed to take out the whole city. We did get legislative appropriation this year through the budget. However, the governor did veto our funding for the secondary feed. We have a number of grant applications out there that we're hopeful that we'll be successful for. FMPA does have to pay a portion of the construction of the feed. They'll pay up to where we take over possession, just like they do now. So the city is liable for the rest from the connection point back into the city. Current cost estimate for that project is just under $3.5 million, and this project is proposed for debt. It's 115 degrees outside. Are there any other questions on these projects before we move into the numbers? All right. So depreciation. As the commission is aware, it is the commission's policy to fully fund your depreciation. Your depreciation is the cost of all your assets divided by their useful life. The goal is that we fund our depreciation, so when our assets have met the end of their useful life, we have a dedicated funding source already in place to go replace those assets. So when assets fall off and we need to replace them, we don't have to keep coming and hitting your rates. Every year we're putting money aside to replace those assets. As you can see in your CIP, how much we're using of our depreciation annually to replace your assets throughout your system. For example, next year, In water, we're using $870,000 in depreciation. Wastewater, $163,000. Your electric system, $540,000. The commission's putting that money aside, and then we're using it to maintain and replace your system. However, the depreciation has increased very rapidly. I was going to have a better chart for you. I ran out of time, so you just have to accept my little bar here. But as you can see, since 2017, across all your utilities, it has increased from a little less than $800,000 to over $1.4 million annually in depreciation funds that we're having to maintain. At the budgets that are proposed for you tonight, we are fully funding your depreciation. The big thing that we're going to have to consider is when that wastewater treatment plant comes onto line. So as an example, we assume best case scenario, the wastewater treatment plant costs $60 million. We less out Archer's share, the net net asset cost to the city is $51 million. At 30 years, that would be your annual depreciation cost of $1.7 million. That's on top of the depreciation the commission is already putting away for future replacement. As a point of reference, your total current wastewater budget is $2.1 million. So your wastewater budget would go from $2.1 million to just under $4 million, with more than $2 million of it being depreciation. For us to maintain the city commission's current policy of 100% funding depreciation, we'd have to raise the wastewater rates by at least 65% to generate that funding. So what we're asking the commission to consider tonight, first of all, it is uncommon in the industry for utilities to fund their depreciation. The city of Newberry is unique in that it is best practice. You absolutely should do it if you can, because it is a great funding source for that future replacement of your system. But most utilities cannot afford to do it. So we're asking the commission to consider tonight is if you would like staff to look into this and bring you back options on how you can either fully fund your depreciation or how we can adjust the depreciation formula to not provide 100% funding. One example may be that we still fully fund depreciation excluding the wastewater plant or excluding large assets over a certain dollar threshold. Just like to get the commission's feedback and any input if you'd be interested in staff preparing some of those proposals for you. You do. However, the cost of the depreciation is outpacing the cost of the increase you're getting in revenue from housing. The biggest part of our depreciation is most likely not. Without substantial rate increases.
Remember, we build the whole thing and then grow to fill it. For depreciation, have the whole capital outlay right up front. That might be another way to go about it. Say to staff, yes, we want you to fund depreciation, commensurate with some proportion of growth, right? I think I prefer the idea of continue to fund depreciation absent the wastewater plant. Because it's the wastewater plant that's really, I admire the commission's policy. I fought for it as commissioner. I fought for it as mayor. It is a best practice. We're one of the only cities that does it. One of the reasons why in the midst of all the chaos that's going on around us, Newberry is on really good fiscal footing. But I agree, I don't think anyone here is going to consider a 65% rate increase to fund depreciation. It is going to make it difficult in the future for how do we address these kinds of things. But this commission has had to overcome that exact same problem that previous commissions have left us of. We just couldn't afford to do it. Right? Fire department's a great example. You guys have pretty much rebuilt a complete fire department. We're in the middle of rebuilding an electric facility all around town. So I think right now we just need you to let it simmer, roll around in the back of your mind, and consider some feedback, ideas.
Commissioner Farnsworth, we're depreciating at about 93,000. Yeah, that's just the 2012 expansion.
If we had been fully funding depreciation since 1973, we wouldn't be in the situation right now trying to fully fund a $60 million wastewater plant, right? We would have had, so where we should have had, 30 million set aside, we had 2. And the regulation. This curveball hit us 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we could have just expanded the existing. Instead, when your permit's up, now you have to build an advanced treatment. So that right there doubled everything. Anything you had to replace, maintain, and I think we have a formula for capital outlay. Depreciation.
Yeah, you use the standard cost of the asset divided by useful life. The one thing to consider, for example, on the the existing wastewater treatment plant, the original wastewater treatment plant in the 70s was fully depreciated 40 years ago. The wastewater treatment plant that the commission built in 2012 was about $2.8 million. Judy probably might remember better than I do. We are fully depreciating that, but at fully depreciation, I'm only going to have $2.8 million to replace it. So we are taking that money that we have depreciated on the wastewater plant and applying it to the new wastewater plant, but it's only ever going to be $2.8 million. Right, because the last one, I can't over depreciate an asset. The other thing to consider is we are retiring that wastewater treatment plant earlier than what its quote unquote useful life is because of the regulations. So it's only having been depreciated for 14 years when the lifespan was 30 or 35 years. We've only set aside a little bit, half of what we should have depreciated. No, you are not required to fund depreciation. No, you are required to build a new wastewater plant. For $40 a month wastewater bill, I don't know if it's gonna.
To Jamie's point, though, this conversation that we've just entertained needs to stay in our brain when it comes to connection fees, tag fees, right? So, got to be a balance, right? We all understand that, but if we aren't, and I don't believe that we can fully fund depreciation with this plan, got to do what we can do for the next generation, set them up. Nobody else ever has to go through what you guys have had to go through in this regulatory transition and skyrocketing cost transition. Right? We've addressed some challenges in those other departments, like we just mentioned. But this has been potentially the biggest regulatory change, construction cost change that we've ever had to. Yeah, last time we did this, it was a $2 million. Right? Now it's a best case scenario, $60 million. Right? So it would have been helpful if we could have gotten Trenton and High Springs. And I think both of those cities now regret because their permits are about up as well. But because the more you can scale it, the easier it is for all of us. But I'll let their attorney answer that.
Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, our permit expired after theirs. So they renewed their permit under the old regulations, whereas ours was renewed underneath the new regulations. Everybody's going to have to comply with the same regulations eventually. We were just one of the first ones.
Other cities still can, but Jones has designed this plan where we continue adding ribs, get my terminology right. So all they would have to do is go to Tallahassee and get funding to put the line down.
Got enough capacity.
Well, we can continue adding capacity. So we'll never have to go through this again the way that it's been designed. So the way it's been designed, we can just add on at a much, much reduced cost and headache rate. Continue to add capacity. How much in the environmental park? 93 acres.
In 30 years, we need a new. You're gonna get a loan, how much?
With the SRF program, you don't have to make any down payment. What they look at is your financial capacity, so they want to make sure you have enough in reserves to float any ups and downs in the economy. And we are using the depreciation you have currently, plus the development fees you've collected, to lower the amount that we're taking as a loan. So we are essentially making a down payment. It's just not running through the bank. Yep. And to the manager's point earlier, just drill it home. Our rates, our existing customer rates are not paying for this new plant. It's been fully funded, fully paid for by grants and other funding sources. So the rate increases that we're talking about are not because we're building this new plant, with the exception of trying to prepare ourselves for the new operational costs. It is not going to pay the $60 million.
Put out there, this is, you're going up. You can't take those numbers and not say we're not gonna go up, or it's right there.
And they've heard me say it to TV 20, Gainesville Sun, Last Chronicle, ever since it first came down. We got this curveball, because remember, we were started on the process of design, and then the new regulations came out and says, no, you're going to an advanced treatment. That changed everything. So, but we all know, you just have to keep saying things. We've been saying it for the last 4 years. Some of our residents are just entering the conversation today, right? So it's a 3-hour epic movie, and if you walk in the middle of it, you're going to be. Always possibility. Always possible.
The current interest rate of SRF loans is sub 1%. So I am making more in investments on your money than the interest is. So we're making more in interest from the bank than we will be paying on this loan.
Yeah.
Be happy to do that for you, Commissioner. All right. So now to the proposed rate changes in the budgets. So to start us off on a nice note, we are not alone in the pain that we are feeling. These are just some recent articles from our neighboring utilities. FPL has requested the largest rate increase in the history of the United States for their electric system. Just to read you a little blurb out of their petition, next year they are requesting an $11.52 per month to their base rate for a residential customer. In 2027, on top of that $11, they'll be adding another $18.50 per month for their electric customers. Clay Electric is proposing a 9.5% rate increase. That's about $10 to $11 per month for their customers. And Central Florida Electric recently announced that they are doing a $14 per month rate increase for their customers. In the utility world, we're all facing the same pressures from increased rates, increased cost of materials, Clay Electric published some information that they've seen the cost of pole mount transformers increase 262%, pad mount transformers 219%, cabling and wires up from 120 to 150%, and the cost of poles up almost 80%. So we in the city are not unique. We are seeing these same cost increases, not only in the electric system, but the water system, wastewater system, and in the general fund. We're all seeing these rate cost increases. So I stole this graph from Central Florida Electric. This shows since 2019, the percent increases in transformers, insulators, and poles and wires. So again, they're showing very similar 175% in cost increase in transformers, 150-something% in insulators, and 60% increase in poles and wires. So, yeah, if you can get them, you just have to wait like, what, 60 weeks, 80 weeks for lead time. And this is...
Should have not planted. Should have been planted. For pole timber.
So we are seeing these rates, these cost increases, again, not only in the electric system, but the cost of our water meters, for example, have more than doubled. The cost of pumps in the water and wastewater system have gone up. On pumps in the water wastewater system, we're fighting with tariffs. Most of our pump vendors are now charging us a 10 to 15% tariff increase on these pumps. And so we're really just seeing those cost increases across everything we're buying. And these aren't small ticket items to begin with, you know. If it's a new system, yes. But we have to replace our transformers and our pumps in our existing system all the time. So back to the depreciation conversation, if 10 years ago we bought a pump for $2,500 and we fully depreciated it, and now the pump is $7,500, we only have $2,500 to replace it. We got to find that $5,000 difference within the existing rates.
Rance, how many poles roughly a year? I know we're working steadily through updating out of whack.
So we have to test our entire system every year. So we test about, on average, about 50 poles a year with a projection of about, I'd say, on average, we change out about and that's all the hardware.
Okay, so the electric revenue forecast, we are proposing a 4.5% rate increase for all customer classes, which would include streetlight customers. This does keep our rates still within the middle of the pack, lower than Central Florida and Clay and FPL and GRU, but kind of goes without saying. So we have a 4.5% rate increase proposed for customers. That's about a $5.37 per month increase for a residential customer who uses an average of 1,000 kilowatts a month. And then commiserate rate increases for our non-residential demand customers.
That also increase revenue.
The franchise fees and the utility taxes will go up onto your general fund side with their rate increases. Yes, Mr. Commissioner. We have a resident question. Want to take questions? Yeah, a large demand customer would be like a Publix, like an Argo, somebody who uses big, lots and lots of power. Yeah. This graph is produced by the Florida Municipal Electric Association every month. They compare all the municipally owned electric utilities as well as the for-profit investor-owned utilities. As you can see, Newberry is fairly in the middle of the pack in terms of municipally owned electric utilities. Our average is just above the municipal average by, last I checked, I think it's $2. So our average utility bill is $125. The municipal average was $123 last year. But as you can see, we're pretty pretty on the money in terms of competition. If I could put Central Florida and Clay on here, they would also be higher than us, closer to where FPL and Tallahassee are. They have a lot of load. Alachua has a sweetheart power deal.
They got a deal with GRE.
When GRU did the biomass and it didn't go well, they had to offload. They probably tell the story better than I can. But Nigel was able to buy in really low for a set, but that leaving it expires in a year, 2 years.
Yeah, Alachua will have to go to the open market when their power deal ends in a couple of years, and the open market is currently higher than what we are paying. So in a number of years, Alachua will probably have higher rates than us. They are enjoying low rates. All right, so moving into like the actual budget numbers for the electric system. Your total electric operating revenue is 7.4 million, up from 6.4 million this year, primarily driven by the increase in wholesale power costs next year. Your wholesale power costs are projected to go up about $600,000. That's where the increase in the power cost adjustment comes. You have a slight increase in personnel services, slight increase in operating services. As you can see in electric, the depreciation is up $60,000 this 1 year. And then your franchise fee general fund transfer is commensurate with your revenue increase, so it increased. We are projecting a operating income next year, about $100,000. About 70,000 of that is going to be used for capital improvements into the system. As the commission's aware, in your electric system, you don't collect development fees. You don't have any sort of funding mechanism for new and enhanced portions of your system. So it does all have to come out of your rates. So those increased rates will go back into your system for infrastructure. And as I mentioned earlier, that'll also prepare us for a favorable rating to your debt agencies when we go to issue debt next year for the Twin Parish project and the secondary feed, because the credit agencies, the banks are going to want to see that we have profit, that we can make the debt service payment. So having a budget that shows an operating profit will hopefully get us a better interest rate in the long term. Before I leave electric, are there any questions? All right. In your water operations, we're projecting a 7.5% rate increase. Your revenues are up from 1.4.5 to 1.7, primarily driven by your rate increase as well as your customer increase and your consumption. We actually did not see a large consumption increase this year. It was actually a little bit flat. It's mostly weather driven and AMI. AMI is helping our customers save more water, so we're selling less water. And then the weather this year or last year kind of flattened our consumption a little bit. So personnel services, essentially flat, normal increases there, essentially flat operating expenses. Depreciation, here's a big one, $120,000 increase in water depreciation year over year. So that's where the majority of that revenue increase is going to go, to fund your depreciation. Again, that's primarily driven by developers building utility systems and turning them over to the city, where it now becomes the city's responsibility to depreciate and maintain those systems. So no major changes in the water system this year, and our projected revenues over expenditures is $79. Anybody's got some ideas on how they want to spend that $79, please let me know. Yes, sir. So here are the rate increases across residential and non-residential. Like I said, it is a 7.5% rate increase across all classes. And then we did widen the gap between tiers 2 and 3. So the higher end users will pay a larger increase than lower end users. The less water you use, the more you'll be able to save. If you're using a lot more water, you'll be seeing a more higher increase than the customer. So the average impact for a customer on the water system is $4.30. In our peer comparison for our local peers, we have slipped a little bit. We're not the lowest, but we're still in range. Alachua's, bless you, is about $2 less a month than us. Gainesville is $4 less a month for us on the residential side. Gainesville has not had rate increases in their water and wastewater system in a number of years in an attempt for them to lower their bills, which is why they have come back. But we still maintain pretty good competition, and we are less than High Springs and the statewide average. So speaking of the statewide average, Raf Tallis, who is a wastewater engineer who the city commission hired to do your impact fee study for your water wastewater rates, every other year prepares a report on the state of Florida's utility rates. So they just came out with their 2024 numbers. I believe I emailed the commission about this a number of months ago. Raf Tallis has done all the research. They say that in 2024, the average water bill in the state of Florida for an average customer is $46.32. In 2026, Newberry's will be $40.69. So we're still well underneath the statewide average, especially considering that the 46 is a 2-year-old number compared to our current number of $40.69. Show this to you to show that we are still very competitive at a statewide. Any questions before I move on to wastewater? All right. In wastewater, your budget last year was 1.9 million. Your budget this year is a little over 2.1 million. There is an increase in your personnel services. That is that new wastewater operator that we discussed that we're bringing on to help prepare for the new plant. Small increase in your operating expenses. And then in your depreciation, an $80,000 increase in depreciation in the wastewater system. So this does provide you a balanced budget with $966 of revenue over expenditures. This is based on an 8.5% rate increase for all customers. I don't want to throw any of our sister cities under the bus. The manager and I had a lunch today with the other managers in the county. One of our sister communities is looking at almost 100% rate increase in their wastewater system. They have a $2 million wastewater system, and they are $600,000 in the hole, which requires them to either raise their rates by $24 a month per customer or eliminate their fire department. So we are doing better than some people. They're having a budget workshop. It might be a different one. So looking at our rates, again, 8.5% increase in all customer classes. Average impact to an average customer is $5.91 per month. So again, looking at a comparison of ourselves versus some of our neighbors, we're, again, just a little bit higher than Alachua and Gainesville, and we're substantially lower than High Springs, if anybody wants to take a guess to which city I was talking about. And then we're a little bit higher than the 2024 state average. However, again, that's a 2024 number, and the number I'm presenting to you is a 2026 number. So I would imagine if you escalated that $71 by the CPI across the state, we'd either be at it or just below it. But either way, we are still within the range of the average for 2026. So across all of the utilities, we have an average residential impact of $15.50 per month. We do not make these rate increases lightly. We have worked very hard to trim as much as we can out of the budget, but as I mentioned earlier, the cost increases are really hurting us. It is a lot for us to absorb.
I just want to interject there and extend my appreciation to the finance department for this. Go all the way back to the second or third slide. Most of the entities around us are increasing the cost of their customers just in electric at or more than what we are looking at across all three, water, wastewater, and so I know it's always tough, but when you look at what's happening at every other city around us, rate increases that they're looking at, for us to be looking at a $15.58 a month, other entities are looking at $4 just in electric, $15 just in electric. It's nothing short of amazing. Also, remember that this budget is getting us ready for the end of 26 and 27. Everything that's coming at us so that in 27, we're not looking at 20%, 25% increases because we kicked the can all the way until couldn't kick it anymore. And then we were looking at 100% rate increase because we didn't do anything ahead of time to get ourselves primed, ready, trained, staffed so that we can serve. Thank you, Dallas. Please pass that along.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Commission, that concludes my presentation. I've got up here on the screen a kind of overview of what we discussed. 4.5% in electric, 7.5% in water, 8.5% in wastewater. We discussed depreciation and our capital improvement program. Happy to answer any questions or take your feedback.
Have that on my slide.
It's on the CIP.
The Tanglewood oversizing project to facilitate sewer connectivity to that would be
We don't generally pay. Developer pays collected from the next people that come in a pioneering kind of agreement. Every once in a while, if it's something extraordinary, there may be a difference.
That had a lift station.
But as regulations are advancing, hardened buildings have to have generators. Pretty hard.
Coming back, no more meeting.
Any questions from the public?
Thank you, Dallas.
If we maintain the current policy of 100% funding depreciation, it would require a rate increase. But the commission is going to ask for staff to come back with other options for their consideration.
Randy only used 38 seconds of the 5
Hey, you bring, hey, tell me there's gonna be a bright spot